Nidhi, does this mean it is without a decision, or is the decision through conjecture that India's bid has been denied, at least for now?
Well, there's been no decision on that, Amitoj, and what we can safely say is that it has been scuttled by China. This is something that will have consequences on the bilateral relationship as well. But let me just bring you up to date on what we're hearing from inside the meeting. We know that the meeting itself ended some time ago, but the members are still working out a statement which they're going to release to the press shortly. So it'll be interesting to see what exactly they say, whether they make any reference or mention of India or a general reference to the entry of non-NPT states. We know that this is a very high wire diplomacy that went on all night, in fact, as well. India's diplomats there working all night to talk to various countries and various stakeholders to work through this. But in the end, the Chinese have been very vocal, very public in their opposition to this. And this morning, I think the signal was clear when a Chinese negotiator, the top Chinese negotiator at the NSG meeting, actually called journalists and gave a soundbite and released a statement to the media saying that India's membership was not going to come up, that this was a matter of principle, that there was no consensus yet on admitting non-NPT states. So the writing was clear on the wall then itself. And what we're hearing from sources now, Amitoj, is that this is how it all actually played out. So you have 48 countries that are members of the NSG. 38 of them have come out in support of India, of which 33 actually very openly, we believe, spoke at the plenary in favor of admitting India as a member of the NSG. Now, among the rest of the countries, then the other 10, there were 6 countries that took the view that the criteria based on which a country should be admitted, as well as India's membership, should be simultaneously discussed. And that included Brazil, as well as Switzerland. So these are 2 countries that have said to India that they back, per se, they do back India's membership of the NSG, but at the same time, they do want a discussion on what the criteria should be for all countries, as well as India's membership to have been discussed at the same time. So that's part 1. Then there were 3, possibly 4 countries, including New Zealand, including Ireland, and possibly Austria, we are hearing from our sources, who felt that the issue of criteria, that is the principle, should be discussed first and India's membership should be discussed later. So in the end, while the Chinese opposition, Amitoj, was clear and was there from the beginning, the fact is that China wasn't alone. It wasn't isolated in the questions that it was raising at the NSG about the issue of and the processes related to India's membership, and that is what has created a problem for India. And it seems that the Chinese were able to steer the debate away from India's impeccable non-proliferation record and focus it on what the process and the principle should be to allow all countries to enter the NSG. And therefore, they seem to have scuttled India's bid for now. It doesn't mean it's an end game. Certainly, this is probably going to go into another NSG meeting, maybe later this year, maybe next year. But certainly, it would be a big disappointment. And as I said, we'll have to wait and see what the effect is on the India-China relationship, because this comes as a snub to the Prime Minister, who had reached out to the Chinese President yesterday in Tashkent asking for support. And certainly, this is not going to go down well here in Delhi. Amitoj.
Right, Nidhi, one final question. It doesn't look good, clearly, because India did not foresee this happening, especially with the Prime Minister reaching out to Switzerland and Brazil.
I wouldn't say India didn't foresee it, Amitoj, because even before the NSG meeting began, officials were very cautious. They weren't raising any expectations. They had said very clearly before the NSG plenary began that this is a complex and a delicate process. And because India is not in the room, it's not a member of the NSG, it is very hard for India to gauge what exactly is going to go on. So the best you can do really is lobby. I think another disappointment for India would be that the Americans did not really push this at the highest levels from the President of the United States, which is what happened in 2008 when India got a waiver from the NSG. And at that time, it was President Bush who had personally called up the Chinese president and ensured that India's waiver went through. This time, there doesn't seem to have been that same level of American diplomacy at play. So that too will certainly be a disappointment. But certainly the way this has been played out by China is something that has deeply upset India.